Dada Maheshvarananda.
Not bad, not
Varananda. I'm not all that good at that particular pronunciation. A yogic monk, activist, and author of 6 books, Dada blends spiritual wisdom with a passion for social change. He's traveled the world, leading workshops and seminars on activism and transformation, inspiring countless people along the way. Now based in Asheville, he serves as the director of the Prout Research Institute and is the president of the Asheville Storytelling Circle. His stories are more than just words. They're invitations to reflect, grow, and awaken to a greater purpose. May I present Dada?
Can anyone guess what my favorite color is? You've heard 2 lovely stories about magic. I'd like to tell you a story about some miracles. And maybe you'll understand why I wear this favorite color, orange. A very long time ago, when I was 21 years old, I had moved to New Orleans. I was working in a psychiatric hospital as an orderly. And I read in a book that yoga was good for you. Back then, in 1974, only hippies and weirdos did any yoga at all. But I was a bit of both. So when I was at Tulane University walking through, I saw a little notice that said, "Free yoga class by Ananda Marga, the Path of Bliss." I like free. I went to the class, and actually I loved it. My body became more flexible. I got full of energy. The teacher gave 2 instructions. He said, you should stretch but never strain, and you should practice every day. I did. I still am practicing 50 years later. I liked it. Now the book also talked about meditation, and it suggested all you need to do is, as you breathe slowly, count 1, 2, 3, over and over. Ichi-ni-san in Japanese. That's what some Zen Buddhists actually do. I tried it. After 3 minutes, I fell asleep, and I knew all about it. So when the instructor said that he was going to give an orientation about spiritual meditation, I've been there, done that, I know all about meditation, it's okay. But he was nice, and it was also free. So I went to that class too. And a monk from Philippines, dressed like I am, same first name, Dada, right? He comes and for one day on his tour to New Orleans, and there were 8 of us who had decided we wanted to learn. So one by one, I let everybody else go first. And finally, I'm the last one. I go in the room, it's candlelit, incense. He's sitting there. I sit cross-legged on the floor, on the mat in front of him. And he says, "So you're the first." He's from another country, you know, so I try to gently explain that actually I'm the last. And he quotes from the Bible, "And the last shall be first." And in perfect English, he explains all the instructions. Now he says, I should practice twice a day, minimum 20 minutes each time. Where am I going to find the time? But this weird thing happened. When I started practicing the meditation, I got more time. My mind became clearer, more focused. I didn't find myself spending hours and hours talking with friends in circles. We could connect very deeply, very quickly. My room became more organized. I didn't put down a paper and then spend 20 minutes looking for it again. My life seemed to become, well, I had more time. And that, to me, was the first miracle. Now, I started to change. I started to also lose interest in getting high with alcohol or drugs because I could get high with the meditation and there was no hangover. I also, they said you should do social service because the motto of Ananda Marga was self-realization and service to humanity. So I started help feeding the homeless and teaching a yoga class in the prison. I always liked helping people. And that makes me feel I have a meaning and purpose in my life. Back then, whenever I traveled around the country, I hitchhiked. And one night, I'm hitchhiking across the country, and somewhere in the Great Plains, a driver, you can't hitchhike at night, dropped me off at a rest stop. And I put my sleeping bag on the grass and I slept. In the morning, when the sun is breaking, I sit up. The sky is this kaleidoscope of beautiful colors, changing every moment. The only artist who can do anything like that is the creator of everything. I figured, I think I'm 1,000 miles from anyone I know. I didn't know too many people back then. But I feel home. I feel loved and safe and home. And this strange thing happened. I feel that ever since, wherever I go. There was a saying, they said, a simple saying, you're never alone or helpless. The force that guides the stars guides you too. I thought, is that even possible? That some consciousness in the universe has a clue that I'm here, cares about me? But that experience in that rest stop, I'm sure of it. Second miracle. So when I was 24, I decided I wanted to become a monk and full-time teacher. Made me a little bit nervous, but first thing I had to do, I felt, nobody told me this, sold all my colorful clothes, sold my treasured saxophone and flute, sold all my books and records, and gave all the money to charity. It just felt like the first thing I had to do. And when I turned 24, I finally left the only country I'd ever known, and flew to India. Now I'm scared. I'm scared first of all because I'm leaving the only country and all the people that I ever knew. There's no internet back then, obviously. And I knew our organization had a policy of when monks and nuns had finished training, they would send us to different countries, different than our own. I have a terrible time learning languages, and I thought this was a big impediment to this life. And I knew that our organization even didn't really have a system of funding or giving allowances to every monk or nun was supposed to inspire donations enough to live on wherever we went. Scared. Second reason I'm scared is I knew the training center I found was this old, big country house outside Varanasi in India. It had no electricity. We used kerosene lanterns and candles at night. It had no running water. There was a big well out back with a long rope and a bucket like she was describing that we pulled up every day to drink, to bathe, to do everything. And there were no toilets either, actually. We went out and fertilized the fields whenever we had to go. It was very ecological back then. I was scared for a third reason, and that was it meant being celibate the rest of my life. Frankly, I never know what I'm going to feel like tomorrow, what to speak of the rest of my life. But you might have noticed relationships take time, and they also take a lot of responsibility. And by choosing not to enter into any relationship, romantic relationship, it means that I can work 24/7. I can go anywhere I'm needed at any time. And the color orange, my favorite color, means service and sacrifice. So I chose this life. And that's the strange thing, because all these things I realized had some purpose behind them. Many people talk about world peace, but I think to make world peace, we need to spend time with people from other countries and other cultures. My time in the poverty of that training center means that I feel comfortable. I can go to any slum or village in the world. I've been there, I'm comfortable. So I've lived now in 32 different countries for 40 years, in Southeast Asia and South America. I have learned so much from the people of each of these countries. And I like to tell you about one more miracle. Well, the fact that I actually love this life and wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, that's pretty amazing to me too. But the story I want to share now took place in Philippines, Manila, Philippines. The woman back there, she used to work with me there too. In the Philippines, we lived in a big old house in the center of Manila. In that house lived 3 monks, me and 2 others, and 8 volunteer young men. 2 miles away was another house where the nuns and women volunteers lived. We were busy teaching yoga and meditation for free. We were running kindergarten schools in poor slums. And every week we tried to organize volunteer doctors and nurses to come. We got donations of medicines from the pharmacies, and they held medical camps in different poor neighborhoods every week. But we're running on broke. We're not getting any funding, and it's pretty close. The money that we got, we spent every day on our food. One night, 1985, there's this big fire nearby. It was a kilometer away, a half a mile away. The whole skyline is glowing from the fire. This other monk, dressed like me, same first name, is standing beside me. We're standing in the driveway of our house, watching this and hearing the news. The best news of all, the boys are in the streets getting all the news from the streets. 50,000 people lost their homes that night. Nobody was hurt. But the water was turned off the same night. And there was a lot of suspicion that it might have been the First Lady, Mrs. Imelda Marcos, who wanted everybody to move out of there so she could build middle-class housing, and they didn't want to go. And maybe there was some synchronicity between the lack of water and the fire breaking out. Anyway, so my friend Dada said to me, we should do social service. Impossible. We have exactly total $8.20 of rice. That's enough to feed us for 2, maybe 3 days. Don't argue, he said. Just go with the flow. All right. Called all the brothers together, 8 of them. We gave $5 to them. They took bus to the all-night Divisoria market. This is the wholesale market where the restaurants, go, and it's open all night wholesale. And they were going to ask for donations of vegetables. Dada and I, we walked half a mile to the fire site. Everybody was in shock. He knew a couple people there, a social worker, a barangay captain. He asked the barangay captain, what do you need? I don't know, we need everything. We don't have toilets. He said, what about food? Yeah. There's a convent, a Catholic convent, right across the street. Their parking lot packed with refugees now, and all along the highway that ran along in front of it, the refugees had piled up all their things that they could get out of their houses before it burned down. And we asked the nun, we said, the Catholic nun, we said, could we distribute food here? She said, of course. So we're walking back. It's about 1 o'clock at night now. And we stop at this little store lit by one candle. And with our last $3, we buy 2 cans of milk and a big piece of ginger root. I said, you're not going to feed many people with that. Don't argue, just go with the flow. Mum's a word, got it. We continue home, put this big pot on the stove, put the milk in, put the ginger in, something, right? When it's hot, we carry it back to the fire site, and people start, we set it on something, I don't know what, and people started lining up because they had bowls and cups and things. And this Filipino gentleman taps me on the shoulder. I've never seen him before. He says, don't go, wait here. I'm not going anywhere, I'm serving milk. So we serve the milk. 20 minutes later, we're finishing the milk. The same man comes back, says, I'm so inspired by what you did. I just bet $200 and bought bread rolls. But I don't know how to give this away. You do it. All right. $200 is a lot of bread rolls, So we each took big sacks and started walking along the highway, giving it to everybody who was still awake at 3 o'clock in the morning now. And some teenagers, when I gave it to them, they said, what? No margarine, no jelly, what is this? They were not complaining. They were joking with me. They were touched. We're fine. Gave it all away. Finally, we're finished. We walk back. We arrive at 5 o'clock back at our house, and the boys had just come back. They had 12 huge sacks full of vegetables because in the all-night market, they heard the same news we heard, and all the vendors gave something for the fire victims. So, 5 o'clock in the morning, we put the pot on. We only had 2 burners. Put the big pot on, vegetables, rice, and very tasty spices, and made lugao, rice stew. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, the first pot, 3 guys walked over to that convent and started distributing food. It said, Ananda Marga Universal Relief Team Amort, service to humanity is service to God. This little banner they had made. And they started serving it. And back at the house, we immediately put a second pot on and started the same thing. I got on the phone, 6 o'clock in the morning. Filipinos wake up early in the morning in the Philippines. And I start calling all our members and say, can you come and help us chop vegetables? And so a whole crowd comes and they're all singing and telling stories and chopping vegetables happily. And somebody brought another 2 burners, so now we can cook 2 pots at the same time every hour. 2 big pots go there, and the other 2 pots come back empty, and we start again. And I on the phone am now calling everybody we knew. Friends, friends of friends, business people we taught yoga to in the past, everybody we knew. And said, can you bring some food for the fire victims? At 7:30, the first car arrives, pops the trunk, boom, 100-pound sack of rice, and they drive off. 8:30, second car comes, pops the trunk, boom, boom, 2 sacks of rice and a case of baked beans, and they drive off. Everything goes in the stew, right? We go on cooking all day long, 2 big pots every hour, and they keep going and coming back and going and coming back. We served that until midnight. The next morning, I'm really worried, and I go to Dada and I say, what are we gonna do about breakfast for everybody? Don't argue, just go with the flow. All right. We did not serve breakfast, or lunch, or dinner. For 3 days and nights, from early morning until midnight, we served rice stew, beluga. I remember very well, because that's all we ate for 3 days and nights, too. Finally, on the 4th day morning, the government finally, social services started distributing food to all the fire victims. And the people had immediately started rebuilding their shacks in this slum area. And they could cook themselves, and the emergency was over. Now, what I learned from this was when people are in need, don't argue, go with the flow, right? But the Bulletin Today, at that time, was the biggest newspaper in the Philippines, national newspaper. And 2 journalists had been covering the fire story, 50,000 people, it was a lot. But they reported that the Anandamarga Universal Relief Team, the first night, had fed hot milk and bread to 2,000 people. And over the next 3 days, hot meals to 20,000 people.
Wow.
All that was $8, 20 pounds of rice, a lot of solidarity and grace. That was a miracle for me. Thank you.